Oh, that should be fun. So tonight I'd like to, I would speculate that nearly everyone in this room has at one time stepped foot in the courthouse. Is that a reasonably good assumption, right? Yeah. Hopefully you were there as a juror and not a defendant. So we have Cathy Wilcox-Barnes, Dakota Stroh, and Steve Ivey speaking. Who's going to go first?
I'm going to go.
Okay, you're on.
All right. Set this in here. So the group has gotten together as Cathy, myself, Dakota, and Desmond, who's probably in the kitchen doing the important job of refreshments for us later. And we got together as a result of the county contacting the society back in November and asking for our input with respect to what is going to occur to the old courthouse after the decision had been made that the Judicial Council decided to actually move the new courthouse to a new location, and so the county is basically wondering, and the city is wondering, the community is wondering, what's going to happen to the old courthouse. And so we got together, we prepared a report, which we shared with the membership. You probably, or should have gotten it as an email. And the county and the city have gotten together and have prepared what's called a reuse study. They've engaged an architectural firm, to take a look at what the possibilities are with respect to the old courthouse and the annex building, which is next door. You've all seen it. It's the one with the big exposed aggregate walls and the parking structure underneath, and then also the Washington Street parking lot. And so they basically asked us for our input. We provided that input, and what I wanted to talk about was kind of what set the stage for the decision by the Judicial Council to actually build a new courthouse in a new location. And kind of to start with that, we have to kind of go back to 2002, which prior to that, the counties pretty much controlled what occurred to their own individual courthouses. There was really no state involvement other than state involvement with respect to what rules were applied, procedural rules, rules of court, jury instructions, things they wanted to have uniformity from county to county. But with respect to the courthouse and the facilities themselves, the county was pretty much in charge. But in 2002, that changed. And I don't know exactly why, but the Senate passed a bill in which control of the courthouses and the facilities was then shifted over to the state. And at that point, and it may have been that a lot of the counties were just simply unable to pay for what improvements needed to be done. Some of the smaller counties, maybe the bigger counties could, some of the smaller counties couldn't. With that, I'm not exactly sure why it occurred, but that's just a guess. The Judicial Council is, just to fill you in on that, is a state agency that was formed back in 1926 by a state constitutional amendment. And initially, as I said, all they had as a responsibility was to provide uniformity with respect to rules to be applied, throughout all the different counties. And the Judicial Council is made up of the Supreme Court Justice, who in turn appoints some of the appellate court judges, some of the district court judges, some attorneys, and one representative from each house. So there's a total of 21 individuals. And so in 2002, they took control over the facilities. They generated a list of which counties needed help with respect to their facilities, which, courthouses needed rehabilitation, which courthouses maybe needed to be rebuilt. And there were 34 county courthouses on that initial list. Nevada County was included, the Nevada City Courthouse was included. It was kind of down at the bottom of the list. And they kind of had some listed as immediate needs, and they also had critical needs. Nevada County was down in the critical needs, and for some reason critical was secondary to immediate. So, I mean, I don't know, that's a matter of semantics, I guess. And then they received a bunch of funding, and they were able to proceed, the Judicial Council was able to proceed with projects relating to the courthouses that were on the immediate, not the Nevada County Courthouse. And then in, I think it was around 2016, 2015, the budgetary funding kind of evaporated. And again, I'm not sure exactly why that occurred, but the money all of a sudden wasn't there. And so with respect to the Nevada City Courthouse and some of the other courthouses on the list, they were put on an indefinitely delayed status. And that delayed status lasted for up to about 2019, so it was about a 10-year period in which nothing really was happening with respect, from the Judicial Council's perspective, with respect to the Nevada City Courthouse. That's not to say that there weren't things going on, because the city and the community during that entire period, were giving it a lot of consideration. And there was actually a couple of studies that were done during that period. One, in fact, financed by the Judicial Council. And the city, in fact, on 2 occasions, issued resolutions advocating for the courthouse to remain in its current location, the building be rehabilitated, but the courthouse to remain in, its current location on Spring and Church Street. Spring and Church Street, Pine Street.
Yes.
Yeah, we all know what's up. Anyway, so, and then there was during that period of time, there was a feasibility study that was in fact done by the Judicial Council, and they hired an architectural firm to conduct a study, and in collaboration with city officials as well as some community individuals as well. And the conclusion that they came to in that study, and this was in 2015, was that the Nevada City Court, has been in continuous operation at the current site for 150 years. It's a major contributing factor to the economic vitality of the Nevada City Central Business District. Relocating the court from that location would create economic hardship on the Nevada City community, and should it occur, it would leave behind a large vacant court building with few development options. So this was in 2015, that this study came out, and actually they did a cost estimate on what it would cost to rehabilitate the courthouse at that time and continue operation there. And it sounds like a large number, but the estimate came in at about $66 million at that point in time in 2015. A lot of this information I was able to get both from the Nevada County website, and you can put in like courthouse reuse study, and you'll get a lot of the information there. You can go to the Judicial Council website, do the same thing, Nevada City Courthouse, you get a lot of information there. And also from the city itself, you can get a lot of information also by, Googling the same sort of stuff. And then in about 2020, funding came back again pursuant to a Senate bill, and the Nevada City Courthouse went from being, on the indefinitely delayed status to, again, on the active status. And you can pull up a list, and this time it's been bumped up in 2020 from that low critical need area that it was before up to number 3 on the immediate need level. So all of a sudden, it's it's right up there. It's one of the projects that they're going to put a lot of attention towards and pursue. And to some extent they have. And what they did was they did another study. They hired another architectural firm, and this is the Judicial Council again that is doing this. And this study, began in 2020, 2021, and the study was basically, at this point in time, what they called a 3-option study report. And 3 options being, number 1, that the existing courthouse be rehabilitated and that it remain in its current location. Number 2 is that the courthouse, and I'm talking about the annex building as well, be raised and a new courthouse be built, but on the same location where it is now. And the 3rd option is that a new courthouse be built on a new site. And as most of you probably know, they opted for option number 3. And this was in 2022. They made the decision that the Judicial Council did, that basically the state is going to essentially wash its hands of the existing courthouse. They have a 51% ownership interest in the building, the annex building, and the Washington Street parking. And that controlling interest actually was given to them back when I was discussing 2002, when the state took over control of the courthouses. So that's how they got that 51% controlling interest. And probably what they'll do is just simply convey that controlling interest back over to the county. And then they're going to be focused on building the new courthouse in the new location. And that new location, which we've recently heard, is going to be where the National Forest Service office is on at the base of North Bloomfield Road in 49.
Coyote Strip.
What's that?
Coyote.
Oh, Coyote, rather. Right. Okay, thank you. So that leaves us with kind of what the study that the city did in 2015 was concerned about, and that is, an empty building in the middle of downtown. And so the question is, and just to give you a perspective on cost, so that 3-option estimates were, and there were a lot of factors that went into the decision, apparently. You can get the study, they have a whole spreadsheet of things that they looked at, including what their estimating costs were going to be for each of the options. And the renovation of the existing courthouse came in at about $220 million. Yeah, the new construction on the existing site came in at about $247 million. And the new construction on the new site came in at about $177 million. So somehow, and you got to remember these are architectural firms doing these estimates. From 2015, for the same thing, it went from about 66 million to 220 million. Anyway, yeah, a lot of inflation going on there. So, basically, that's where everything stands today. That's, in a nutshell, I mean, a whole speaker's night could be devoted to the process, that I just described. It's been really in 20 years of limbo with respect to, what's going to happen to the courthouse. But now there's a pretty certain degree of certainty, or uncertain degree of certainty, that the new courthouse is going to be built on a new site, and that we're going to be looking at what is to become of the old courthouse, so what we need to do is, and what we're going to do tonight, is look at the history of the old courthouse specifically, and we're going to look at what sort of impact it's had on the community over the last 150 plus years, and as importantly, what sort of impact, hopefully, can we expect of it, for, the future. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Cathy.
Thank you, Steve.
Good evening, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try to project my voice a little. If I start going low, raise your hand, unless you're raising it for one of the questions I'm going to ask you. So my part of this presentation is, I'm not going to say the boring part because there's never anything boring about Nevada County history, but I have the serious part of why historical preservation and how important it is for preserving our historic buildings. And I feel sort of like I'm preaching to the choir because you're all here tonight because you love Nevada County history and you want to preserve it, I'm guessing. Or you're here for the free cookies afterwards. Could be a little of both. But anyway, so I'm going to start by asking a couple of questions. First, my first question is anybody in attendance tonight that went to Grass Valley High School or Nevada Union High School prior to 1965? Anybody? I know there's a couple because I've seen them as they were coming in. Well then, you're going to understand when I say, when you're in school and you're always hoping you get a fun teacher like Chief Stevens. But you don't, and you get the one that's not so fun, like Dorothy Dyke. I'm Dorothy tonight. I'm going to try to make it fun. So if you missed that, if you didn't go to Nevada Union or Grass Valley High before 1965, speak to one of the people who raised their hand and ask them about Dorothy Dyke. Anyway.
I had Chief.
You had Chief, okay. I did too. I had both. Anyway, so now we'll ask a couple of questions to get us started. And the first one is, Dan already asked it, how many of you have been in the courthouse? Pretty much everybody in the room. How many of you have worked in the courthouse? Great. We've got some people in here that have worked in the courthouse. And we're hoping to hear from some people who worked in the courthouse. But most people have been touched by the Nevada County Courthouse, whether you went. How many of you went in and got your marriage license there? Your child's birth certificate was recorded there. I mean, you paid your taxes there. You registered to vote, or you went there on election night to see what the results were coming in. We've been somehow involved in the Nevada County Courthouse our whole life. And when you come into town, Nevada City, what's one of the first things you see as you're coming in on the freeway, over the Sacramento Street overcrossing, you're going up Broad Street, you see the Nevada County Courthouse, that glorious building that is sitting on the hill that people have looked up and seen for over 160 years in different shapes and forms. And you're going to hear about the transitioning of the courthouse just a little bit later from Dakota. But in all these pictures, you'll see front and center in Nevada City, sitting on that little knoll of Spring and Pine Street, the courthouse. So, is there anybody in the room tonight who's been in Nevada County less than a year? How about less than 3 years? Boy, we have all seasoned people. Less than 15? Okay, a few hands go up. How about more than 30? More than 50? And how many were born and raised in Nevada County? What is the one thing, whether you've been here 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 50 years, or more, I'm not going to say how many have been here because that was giving away secrets. But anyway, what makes Nevada County home to you? What makes it feel different? How many of you came from somewhere else? And if you go back there, for instance, say you came from San Jose, or you came from Long Beach, and you can't even find your old neighborhood anymore. And you don't know, you go down there and you don't even know where you are. That doesn't happen in Nevada County. And why is that? It's because Nevada County, we try to protect and maintain our history. And you always have this feeling of place, a way that you're connected. And when you have that feeling of place, and you have that feeling of belonging, and you look up and you see a familiar building it grounds you, it's your roots. You want to become more involved in the community, don't you? You feel like you're a part of the community. And that's a big part of what historic preservation is all about. When you drive into Grass Valley maybe and you look over and you see the Veterans Building, you think, oh, I'm home. Or you drive into Nevada City and you see the courthouse. It gives you that feeling like you're putting on your comfortable pair of sweats or your old favorite tennis shoes that you always wear, and you're comfortable. And it just makes you feel good. And that's what, to me, historic preservation, the importance of it is. And there's different things that come about from historic preservation. There's that feeling of, yes, this is home. And there are those tangible things and those things that remind us of the people and the events that have shaped our community. One of the things that shaped our community, sometimes we've gotten it really right. Sometimes we've kind of missed the mark a little bit. And sometimes we've almost missed, but pulled it out at the last minute. And so those are the things, the freeway coming through, split both towns. I'm not saying whether that was good or bad. There was good things about it, but could the alignment have been a little bit different so that it didn't have quite that impact on the two towns? Anybody recognize this building? Raise your hand if you know what it is. Shout out the answer.
Nevada City High School.
Nevada City High School. Where is it?
Gone.
Gone.
Kidder Mansion.
Kidder Mansion. Gone. Now I'm going to say these are ones that maybe we could have done a little better on. Kidder Mansion. What went along with the Kidder Mansion when you think about it?
The railroad.
The railroad. The right-of-way to the Nevada County Railroad. As late as, I guess I'm going to say, the early 1980s, the railroad right-of-way between Grass Valley and Nevada City was still unencumbered, nothing built on it. Frank Nucky was the mayor of Grass Valley at the time. I happened to be mayor of Nevada City at the time. Both towns pledged not to allow any building on the right-of-way. The person who was the supervisor at the time fought us tooth and nail and absolutely would not try to protect it. It's encumbered now. If you go down what's now called Old Tunnel Road, atop, that was unencumbered. It now has senior apartment living on it, which was built shortly after that supervisor left office. Anyway, so, what else do we have up with Dakota? Oh, this is the Grass Valley Depot, gone. And some of those probably would have gone anyway, but now we know we probably would fight a little bit harder to keep them. This is an example of where I think we did it right. Nevada City City Hall, built at the same time by the same people who built the county courthouse, 1937. We restored it, and it's a functioning, really good building in Nevada City now. People can't tell the difference if they really hadn't been around here a long time. And one of the things we did not run into, even though we hear a lot, oh, we're going to be asbestos, we didn't run into any asbestos when we were redoing that building. Odds Assay Office, I'm titling this one a near miss. The freeway almost took it out. The city worked with the state to change the freeway, realign the freeway, and that jog as you come down, if you're coming down 20 and you sort of do that weird jog out, that was to save Odds Assay Office and the South Yuba Canal building. And we got those, they're being used very actively today. Grass Valley's old post office. Could have been torn down, but it's functioning, was restored and functioning very well as offices. Anybody know what this one is? North Star. How many of you know how close we came to losing that beautiful Julia Morgan structure? We came within a cat's whisker of losing that one. First, there was some intentional neglect, hoping that it would get vandalized to the point that it would either burn or be allowed to be demolished, so subdivision could be built there. Was rented out to a boys' school that did not do the kindest things to it. But the community jumped in and we have this beautiful community event place there now. Anyone recognize this one?
Yes.
The Celio Barn. This one came close too. It was the original warehouse building, if you want to call it that, for the Celio Grocery, later the Plaza Grocery, that then became a number of things through the years. Lefties now, and now it's Deer Creek Bar and Grill. But this was where they stored their groceries. Well, then it was turned into a horse carriage business where the horses were stabled for a number of years. If anyone had a reason and an excuse to tear something down, it would have been that. You couldn't walk within a block of it without smelling it. What they did, we got a person bought it and said, I'm going to save it. They built a window inside an envelope, not a window, an envelope inside the building, and we have pictures of it being braced up and the work going on, and it's there today, and it's was used as a successful hair salon business for a number of years by Nyla Hattie. And now it's being used, I believe it might be being used as private residence. So those are things that came really close, but we pulled it out. Is that the last discussion? Rose? Okay. So I've touched on a couple of the things that are important about historic preservation. And one of the things I want to leave, a couple of things to leave you with from my portion, is that once it's gone, we're not getting it back. Historic preservation is never the easiest route to go. It's never the cheapest route to go. And as we heard when we were meeting about the reuse of the courthouse, and it doesn't, I hate this phrase, the highest and best use. Well, historic preservation is not always the highest and best use in the eyes of a developer, but it is the highest and best use in the heart and soul of Nevada County. And historic preservation doesn't happen on its own. You cannot sit back and say, I'm going to let the other guy do it. Because while you're sitting back saying, I'm going to let the other guy do it, they may be sitting back saying, I'm going to let the other guy or gal do it. And next thing you know, you look and you go, wow, how could we have let them tear down that beautiful courthouse? So with that, I will close with a quote that I love, and I think it sums it up for me, and it's by John Steinbeck. How can we live without our lives? How will we know it is us without our past? So it's up to us to preserve and protect that beautiful building on the hill. And now Chief Stephen's part of the presentation. Dakota's going to tell us some of the fun facts and things that have happened in the courthouse.
Is this working? Is this on? I don't think so. Should be on. Testing, 1, 2. Testing. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me? Everyone can hear me?
Yeah.
For people that don't know me, my name is Dakota Stroh. I am lucky enough to have 5 generations. Well, I'm the 5th generation that's walked through the halls of that courthouse. I became a part of the society a couple years ago, and I've been wanting to do my part in preserving the history and helping educate the younger people. So I will be taking you on a little backstory of the life of the courthouse and some of the things that happened in it. So looking at this picture, you'll notice one of the names right there blazes. A common visitor to Nevada City, he was known every time he came to town, was a man named Samuel Clemens. Other people know him by Mark Twain. He would always stop by there and walk around Nevada City looking for inspiration, whether it was the grounds of the courthouse or up and down Broad Street. That was where you would find him. The differences in these pictures, these are all looking up Pine Street. You'll notice that the 3rd story was added to the courthouse. The 3rd story was added to the courthouse in 1900. During that construction, when they were adding the 3rd story, all official records were stored in the Owl. The Owl was the saloon. What better place to store all your official records of the county than a saloon? Now, we don't know if that was for reasons where just they had a bar downstairs and they go upstairs and work on the official records, or if their reasoning was that it was one of the fireproof buildings as it was a brick building. No matter the architectural changes to the courthouse over the years, the one thing that has stood tall for everyone walking up and down Pine Streets has always been the courthouse. It's one thing, no matter how it changes, you're always seeing that courthouse. While it is a little blocked right now by trees and you don't get the best view of it, it is still there today. This one is a more modern picture. That one is probably 1950s. 40s, okay. This one was when they raised the flag on the courthouse. On September 9th, 1889, when the flag was attached to the Liberty flagpole, the building was covered in patriotic decorations, and the town as well. The people covering the sidewalks, streets, balconies, or even on the roofs, as you can see, raised that in a patriotic spirit where it can be inside. The flag measured 22 feet long and went up 50 feet in the sky, so you could see it from anywhere you were.
Boy, that's gutsy to get out there.
Yeah. So recently we were privileged to be invited for a tour of the courthouse back in December. And the CEO, Layla Wahid, and administrative assistant Shannon Bowling took us on some of these areas that haven't ever been explored in the past decades, I want to say. One of the locations we went to was upstairs in the 4th floor, was the old judge's chambers right here. This was his private chambers that went into from the 3rd story right there of the courtroom and went up to his office. This is the current condition of it. Obviously, you can see it's seen better times. While the furniture in there is still some authentic furniture, it's not in the best condition. This was another thing that we saw. We were walking by, this is on the 2nd floor. Layla mentioned that there's a story that's been passed around, a ghost story, that someone got trapped in the vault and died. Well, there is some truth to that. He was not trapped in there. It was the county clerk in 1867 when an explosion happened inside the vault. For some reason, they had the gas coming out into the vault. And when they opened up the vault door to go in there, they lit the match, and kaboom. It was R.H. Farquhar and his brother, the deputy county clerk. His brother was the one that walked in first and lit the match. He's the one that survived, and he was the one inside the vault. The explosion pushed outward into the face of the county clerk and blew him back into the wall. They don't know if that was from if him passing was from the actual explosion or the impact was so bad on the wall from the bruising. The 20-inch brick wall between the vault and the clerk's office was standing out almost 5 inches. The window frames and lights were broken, and the entire outer frame of the window opening to the front of the courthouse was blown out onto the lawn. Doors broken into fragments, and many office walls were shifted, including the stairs. The explosion started, as I mentioned, when opening the vault door. The two brothers smelt an odor, but assumed it was a small gas odor as usual. As I said, George picked up a match after unlocking the inner door and lit it on the iron safe. It did not explode yet. He walked in, farther in, entering in the vault as usual, and nearly to the point in the inner vault where the gas jet was located, the explosion happened.
When did this happen?
1867. Yes. So it was 3 years after the building of the courthouse. So it did not take long for the first incident to happen. And it was stated that people all across Nevada City felt the explosion. This is the back section where this was the old jail. This is the condition currently. It was used as a storage area and just sitting there now.
It needs help.
Yeah. You'll notice that walls are falling off, exposing the original brick from the 1800s. This on the other side, looking in, the 3rd floor is still the DA still has an office in there for storage, and it's sometimes used for just extra storage on boxes, but it's off limits to the public. Behind some of the walls, you're even able to notice some of the original jail cell bars in the 1800s that are hidden behind the walls. Now, we were hoping that Vince Seck would be here to join us, as he was someone, personal experiences working inside the jail. I cannot relay his full stories, but he did tell us a story the other week when we were talking to him about it. And he mentioned when he was walking in there, in the second floor, he had a chain gang of inmates walking into the courtroom. One of them, as they're walking through the door into the courtroom, grabs the telephone and hits him on the back of the head. And so he turns around, and all he had to say was, "Everybody on the ground now." And that one that hit him was the first to hit the ground. While Vince is not alone in his stories, there's one other person in here that had a sheriff experiences, and that is Troy. Troy, would you like to come up and say a few words about a personal story?
I started working at the courthouse in 1972. The first time I went into the courthouse that I recall was, I was a tweener, I guess, between 7 and 13. And what I remember most of that visit was, I think it was on the second floor. There was a map of the county and a big display of butterflies and bugs. And I recall that. I don't know what happened to it. I've asked and nobody seems to know where it went.
It's up in truck.
Is that where it is?
It's on this way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing I remember is after I started to work there, and I took my kids and several other kids from the county to the only known elevator that I knew. First time and only time that some of them had ever rode an elevator. As far as working for the sheriff's office, again, I started in 1972, hired by Wayne Brown, and worked there until, I think it was 87 when we moved over to the Rood building. A few experiences that I recall. There was one time when a guy shot his wife and her attorney, and it was a divorce case on the second floor of the courthouse. Pardon?
Bill Heidelberg.
It was Heidelberg, was the attorney, yes.
Did they survive?
Pardon?
Did they survive?
The attorney did. I think both of them did.
Well, that's crazy.
Did the divorce
It created some excitement. So it's just, I don't know, that was probably the most exciting thing I remember in the courthouse itself happening. Yes?
How did someone get in with a gun?
Security wanted that tight back in the day. That happened back in the mid-70s, I believe. Late 70s.
But how was the divorce set?
I think she probably got her divorce. But it was interesting. In that picture there, this lower building here is where the investigators were, that down right in there.
That's the
When
sheriff's
I was an investigator, that was from the sheriff's office, that was our office, and there's 5 or 6 of us in there. But it's very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I felt like it was better to hear the history from the people that experienced it themselves. And thank you for your service, Troy. Some of the exhibits that you might not be aware of in the courthouse. When you first walk in and you look to the left behind the security desk, there's a bunch of things in the glass case. many of the things belonging to a General James Collins. Now, his name isn't really known about too much to a lot of people, but he was a significant person in the early days. He served as colonel in the Illinois militia in the 1830s, serving with the likes of multiple future presidents, governors, and many other prominent figures, including Jefferson Davis, Abe Lincoln, and fighting alongside President Zachary Taylor, who was also a colonel at that time. He later valiantly fought in the Mexican War, to which he was presented a ceremonial sword that is displayed in that cabinet today. You can see it right there. He immigrated to California in 1849 and lived in Nevada County for his entire rest of his life. 1861, he was appointed Brigadier General by Leland Stanford of the 4th Division of the California Militia. He was the county treasurer at the time of his death in 1864, and the last thing he ever worked on was the courthouse. It was said from many that knew him that if he sought higher positions, such as governor, president, whatever it may be, he would have easily been granted them. But it was his modesty and repugnance to the practice of seeking office that he never had a desire. Positions were instead thrusted upon him, to which he answered the call, if compatible. He never asked for preferred treatment from the public. Another exhibit is more home to the Historical Society because it is the Searles gun collection. Many of these guns were owned, well, actually all of the guns were owned by this man right there, Fred Searles Sr. Some of the guns came from his dad as well, Niall Searles. And these were donated to the county in 1966. The firearm collection include many of the guns that won the West in the context of protecting and feeding the early settlers, from early matchlocks as well as flintlock rifles, dueling pistols, and many more. Another exhibit that you'll see in the courthouse are the old native sons of the Golden West banners. These banners were paraded throughout the cities for any of their grand parlors that took place, whether in Nevada City or Grass Valley. Here you will see that exact banner walking through Grass Valley in 1892, and that's on display right there in the courthouse. Okay, the Miranda warning. I would like to assume that, can I see a show of hands, everyone has heard the Miranda warning? Okay. Hopefully you've heard about it or watched the TV shows. You might have seen it on your favorite crime TV shows or documentaries. For those that do not know, the Miranda warning is a type of notification given by law enforcement authority to someone if they are a possible suspect of a crime. This is to notify the person that they are not required to speak and possibly avoid self-incrimination. Some of you may not know the Miranda warning's connection with Nevada County. In 1966, a meeting of California district attorneys met to discuss how law enforcement officials should implement a new rule issued by the U.S. Supreme Court in Miranda v. Arizona that ordered police to inform suspects in custody of their Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. California Attorney General Thomas Lynch asked Deputy Attorney General Doris Meyer and Nevada County District Attorney Harold Berliner to craft a quick and easy statement that officers could recite during arrests. This is Harold Berliner. He was our notable district attorney, which doesn't have the credit that he deserves and what he provided for the nation. Within 2 hours of being asked to draft a statement, the two of them turned out what is believed to be the first written version of Miranda warning, stating with 7 words written by Berliner: "You have the right to remain silent." Berliner had stated later on that he never considered it to be a piece of Americana, but he just thought it was a job and to get it done. Berliner, who had also earlier run a printing press in town for small stories and books, found himself printing again shortly after writing Miranda warning. This time, sensing a business opportunity, He quickly printed out wallet-sized Miranda cards for all law enforcement agencies across the country to pull out of their wallet and show to the suspect. And I'd also like to make a mention that we're fortunate enough to have Harold Verlinger's daughter here with us this evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Praised for its simplicity and clarity, the California version is the most commonly used wording today and is known worldwide to audiences of Hollywood and TV shows. This is a picture of him in his office in the annex. You see the big glass windows. Now it's him going to work, bringing his flag into work.
Looks like St. Canis Church in the distance.
Another person who is a special person to the Historical Society is a man named John Nettle. This man right here. He was an uncle of Brita Brzezinski's, who we unfortunately lost here recently. And he was the county recorder. In the 1940s, this was their scanner. He would use that in the courthouse, and they estimated, they bragged about they were able to scan 20 documents a day. During this time, the history of Nevada County was kept by him and included all official records of thousands who take their documents to the office for establishment in files which lasted for years. So this is the earliest version, the 2-story version. And you'll see the 3-story next to it. Right here extending out used to be the wall for the jail yard. When they originally had discussions about creating the 3rd story on the courthouse, it was not necessarily meant to go that way. There was more of in secret, and the supervisors voted that they want to move the jail across the street to where Doris Foley's library is located now, and they want to make the jail cell offices. Well, that got published in the newspaper, and shortly after, the county shut that down. Instead, they built the 3rd story. This jail yard wall was taken down in 1900 and used to level out the property across the way at the Doris Foley location, in which 2 years later, the Carnegie Library was built there. Right here, you're able to see the back of the jail cell, which is only 2 stories, and then when the 3rd story is added on. This happened about a decade later, and unfortunately, the 500-pound bell that was announced for official proceedings, what's going on in town, and even executions would be ran.
Where they do that,
Huh?
where they do executions.
So as far as executions, it depended. Some I read that they would go outside of town and didn't want to bring it inside. I also did read one execution that happening from that balcony. Also another one, gallows were put on the front lawn and they were executed on the front lawn in one instance.
Where is the bell now?
Don't know. That is a good question. I would really like to know that. But that was taken down in 1912, so anybody ever hears about a bell? Be happy to know. Another thing that you can notice, this original balcony, when the modern structure got added onto that in the 30s, there was talks about moving this balcony because it was original quarry granite from the 1850s. And they wanted to make that the entrance of Pioneer Park as a memento to it. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and that ended up as a retaining wall in R.J. Bennett's private park.
Is that where it is?
Yes, so there's pieces you can still find pieces coming up.
Interesting.
So as I mentioned, in 1936, is when what we know of the courthouse today was starting to be built. It was partnered with the WPA project and the Sarah project, which
Was the old courthouse demolished, or is this a remodel, or?
as you can see, in this one, it was covered over.
So it's a remodel,
Yeah.
so there's still bits of the old courthouse inside?
Yeah, the real being of the courthouse is still the original 1864 courthouse. It's been there for 160 years.
Was this design controversial at the time?
At the time, not necessarily, because it was during the Depression and with the WPA project that was put on by the federal government. They wanted work, and it wasn't too much concern about getting rid of that.
Dakota, there were also a lot of complaints about lack of an elevator. And it's in that
Oh, yeah.
addition.
Yes, as Pat mentioned, there was a lot of complaints about a lack of an elevator and having to walk up to 3 stories. And this was added on during this, and you can see the scaffolding right there. Early days, the WPA, it started out okay for the people, but they were on a week-to-week basis. So they could show up 1 week and work and not get notified for 3 weeks until the next time they're supposed to work. This led to a lot of delays, and they were only able to get the left wing done in a matter of 18 months. With wanting to get it completed, the county took over and provided county funding, which saw the remaining tower, elevator, and right wing built within the next 6 months of that. And that is where we are today. To be or not to be?
That's the question.
That is the question.
You have information on the 2 earlier courthouses, 1896, and the second time?
Yes. And his question was if I know about anything about the early courthouses from 1856 to when it burnt down in 1863. So the original courthouse was on Broad Street. And that was, if you're at the National Exchange Hotel, you're looking across to the Alpha Hardware. You look to the right, that little park, that's where the original courthouse was. That burnt down, and it was moved up onto the hill into this location in 1856. It lasted about 6 months until that one was burnt down.
6 months.
Yeah, that first one on there was burnt down.
Was the first one arson?
No, that was one of the multiple instances of the city burning down. Then it was rebuilt again. 1863 was when the next fire happened. And then they wanted to plan to save it, but they found out the foundation was actually cracked, and they ended up moving the foundation 10 feet forward. So our original structure is an 1864 structure.
Much of the early records were destroyed, which was a sad thing.
Yes, most of the early records were destroyed. And this is the conclusion. If anyone has any questions about the history or for either Cathy or Steve.
Yeah, I'll just mention one thing about, so Dakota mentioned that we were lucky enough to get a guided tour of the courthouse by Layla Waleed and Shannon Bowling. And at the end of that, conclusion of that tour, they suggested that maybe some of our members and some other members of the community might be interested in having tours as well. And we said, sounds like a good idea. And so I had sent out a notification to our membership requesting, if people were interested or not in doing that. And got a lot of response. I think I got at least 40 emails in response. Of those 40, it was probably half, were couples. So that's about 60. And if you're not a member or you didn't get that email, I do have a sign-up sheet at the table as you walked in. And go ahead and put your name down, put your email address down. And we're meeting next month again with Layla and Shannon to kind of discuss, some of the specifics, like, times. We don't know if they want to do it, when the courthouse is closed or when it's open, how many people to a group, what the scope of the tour would be, how far they're gonna be willing to take, the tour, into the kind of the, the back rooms and so on. And just kind of hammer out the details, and once we have those details, we'll be sending out, basically invite, guest invites with, days and times on that, and people, can actually sign up for an actual tour. So if you're interested, we do have that sign up list out there. If you haven't already signed up, or sent me your email address.
And I know we've run over a little bit, and I hope you've enjoyed what we've had to say. We're all three up here to answer any questions. John Gibbons has asked if he could just make one short comment about the courthouse.
Yes, may I? I'm
Very
doing this
short.
because, very short, because my wife is insisting that I make short comments. So, of course, a little bit about the history of the construction. Our former Chief Justice was a gentleman named Ronald George. And back for many years, he was concerned that not only did he want to establish standardized procedures throughout the court, but he wanted to standardize the buildings, which were at that time owned and controlled by the counties. And he felt it was very hard to have an adequate and fair administration of justice when there were so many differences in the county courthouses in terms of design. He felt many of them were obsolete, may not have been well maintained. So I can't remember if it was either a vote by the people or in the legislature, but the courts, the state then took over control of the courthouses, owning 51%. This would then allow Ron George to have this standardization of courts, and they created an office known as the Office of Courthouse Construction, or the OCC. Well, how do you pay for all this? Well, I won't go into all of that. Let's just say it was creative fundraising. Basically, if anybody here knows anything about funds, they were bonds that were not backed by the full faith and credit of the state. We'll let it go at that. Okay. Just one more quick comment. Ron George was then replaced in 2010 by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who appointed Tani Sakauye, who then became the new Chief Justice. And at that time, Governor Brown in 2010 then cut over $600 million from the court budget, over $300 million in construction, and over $300 million in court administration. So in July of 2010, the Chief Justice then ordered a special meeting of the Judicial Council. How are we going to deal with these budget cuts? And at that time, our courthouse was listed on the critical and immediate list. Well, what happened was a presentation was made that explained that the courts are planning to spend $108 million on a new courthouse in our county. Well, where would you put it? Well, guess what? At that time, the Board of Education had decided to close down NCE because of declining enrollment, and the office, the OCC, decided wouldn't that be a Jim Dandy place to build a new courthouse? Well, you can imagine the neighborhood response to that. By the way, that was also a WPA project. It was designed by a fellow by the name of William Moosier III. I think it was his grandfather who designed the Grass Valley Library. So the Moosiers are a very, very famous family. And if you look at the NCE, Nevada City Elementary, and Moosier's most famous design, which is the San Francisco Maritime Museum, you will see a family resemblance. And also, if you look at NCE and the San Francisco Maritime Museum and our gorgeous courthouse, once again, you will see a family resemblance. Well, the National Preservation Historic Society, did I get it right? The National Society of Historic Preservation got wind of what was going on in their county, and in the October issue of their magazine listed our courthouse as a threatened national treasure. And then in January in the magazine, they had a wonderful article on trouble in the gold rush town about how we were in danger of losing not only NCE, but our courthouse. At any rate, there was a big hue and cry, and finally the Judicial Council decided they would rather spend $108 million renovating the courthouse in San Diego instead of us. What a surprise. So at any rate, it went on the back burner, but finally, you know, just like the horror movies, you know, the first time you kill a monster, it never dies, right? You got to kill it 2 or 3 times. I feel this is the same way with our courthouse. We thought by 2011 we had killed the monster. The judicial courthouse, the Judicial Council, had then decided to put us at the bottom of the list. But somehow they found the money, and so once again our courthouse is now threatened. So at any time, the Historic Society was really supportive way back then in the day of maintaining our courthouse. I won't go into all the organizations. The California Historic Foundation, which is the California chapter of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, came to the defense of our courthouse. So there are a number of individuals, organizations that just fought tooth and nail, and what a surprise, we lost. But at any rate, I hope you can find a place for it. But anyway, if anybody's interested in a little more of its history and the legal issue of what transpired way back, at any rate, the courthouse was supposed to have been torn down in 2015, and at least we delayed it for a decade. Thank you for your extra 5 minutes.